It occurred to me that in the last lecture that I gave along with my girlfriend, we didn't really talk about a lot of specific lyrics. And so I could see an objection to the point we were making being that a lot of what we were talking about as an artistic persona being created through the lyrics and the instrumentation, that was really just something being projected by the interpreter. And so I guess here I just want to give a brief lecture just on a specific song and how that specific song achieves the kind of effect that we were speaking about. And so the song that I mentioned in the last lecture is probably one of their best songs is Heart in a Cage. And that's some of the lyrics I want to talk about because it particularly grounds the point I was making about the Promethean lineage of whatever kind of mythical character the music is about. And so to contextualize why I say that's probably one of their best songs is not that I think it's objectively the best. I think opinions on the Strokes seem very varied. So there's a lot of people that think that Come Down Machine is like one of their best albums. There's people that just listen to their new music or maybe have just heard about, like, all they know is like maybe some of the new stuff because maybe they're younger or whatever. There's people that have just listened to the older stuff. There's people that have listened to a lot of the stuff in the albums but haven't listened to a lot of the singles or the voids or everything else. And so I also wanted to specifically say that most of the time I'm listening to this music, I've created this like playlist, and I would say about half the time I listen to like the albums or just like the music like from the page of the artist, but the other half of the time I'm just listening to this playlist, and I'll link or I'll show the playlist because it's important to. I thought it was just an interesting idea to say, like, how much do I think of this guy's music is like, I wouldn't change a thing, like it's just perfect. And so the point of this playlist isn't this is just all their good music, because there's a bunch of songs on Is This It that I think are really good, but to me that album, even though it is a fully formed creation, it is compared, especially compared to Room on Fire. And I thought it was interesting that we didn't really even mention Room on Fire in the last lecture, because Room on Fire is in some ways probably their second best album, because just the whole first half of it is perfect. I think it kind of goes on a little bit, and I don't really like the second half of it nearly as much. But that's all just to say that when I'm talking about this artistic persona, I'm not exactly sure how much that is an intention of the artist. And oftentimes in modern art, there's a lot that the viewer has to come to terms with that they can't get from the physical world. And all I mean by that is that your relationship to the art as an individual means that even though you want to know as much about the reality of whatever art I guess you don't really want to know that much about the reality. The whole point of art is to exercise the imagination. And so if you're listening to music purely to relate to real people, there's nothing wrong with that, I guess. I'm not at all arguing with that point of view. I'm just saying in this specific way of thinking, you're kind of mythologizing whatever is going on. And so you're introducing elements outside of the source material. So you get this kind of like amalgamation of an imaginative vision. And Heart in a Cage is the perfect example of that. Because while most of what is limiting him in a lot of the music is like a vision of himself, in Heart in a Cage, the cage is obviously a representation of what kind of relationship is going on here. And because of the music and a lot of the other rock music that's out there and stuff, I think it's very easy to assume that the cage is like the relationship with his girlfriend or something. But I think it maybe is like that's kind of an important part of all of it, is like in that song specifically, like seeing a girl at a show or whatever. But it's really kind of more, the vision becomes much more expansive because of specific lyrics. And so I'm not saying like listen to the song and as you do it, it's like this perfect story or whatever. But as you listen to the song and, it becomes very well known to you, and it also has one of just like the most classic Strokes sounding and really kind of cool guitar licks. And so I'm not going to say all the lyrics, but there's this one particular lyric. I went to the concert and I fought through the crowd. Guess I got too excited when you were around. And it goes left, 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 left. And then this is really the interesting lyric. And I'm sorry you were thinking I would steal your fire. And so I'm sure there was some reaction when I brought up like the idea that this mythological character is kind of like a Promethean or satanic character. But this lyric, I'm not saying that that's like exactly what it means and it is a direct reference, but it is the exact same way of figurating the emotional drama. And so if the relationship was about purely the girl, it's kind of interesting to say you were thinking I would steal your fire because the fire is then coming from another person, whereas in Promethean myth, the fire is stolen from God. And so I don't think the idea is to bring kind of like a mythological structure down to the realm of pop music. I think the idea is that within pop music and within these melodies and rhythms and sounds created by guitars and the whole style and like fashion and culture of rock music, that can be a full expression of a human being. That doesn't have to be like something that is subjugated to other forms of art. And if we're really going to understand museums, there can't be this huge difference between that kind of an artistic vision and whatever is going on in museums. And I think because it is the reason I bring that up is it seems like a lot of people assume there is. And when they go into, when artists are supposed to make art that goes in museums, I feel like a lot of times nowadays they have no idea what to do. And the other thing is it's not hard to understand that back in the day they just really knew how to train artists, and people would really train as painters, and especially people that would paint like portraits and landscapes and stuff. They were just phenomenal painters. And nowadays art schools, to my understanding, kind of more about like you have to be this creative individual person. And the thing is that's true to be an artist, but that's not what you need to teach in school. Teaching in school is like provide the supplies and the knowledge of how to physically do it. And that's not what art school is about. I took some painting fucking classes and they made you go buy the paint and shit, and you're already paying for school, and it's like, all right, some like grad student that doesn't even fucking care about teaching you, and it doesn't matter. And so I think a lot of people then kind of turn to music. And the thing about music, and most people that I see with a lot of creative talent end up being kind of destroyed by the culture and the way that music is consumed. And I don't think that young people need to be making all that much music. There's so much music out there, and so much of it is so boring and vapid. And I think that's just why it's kind of cool that the Strokes are so popular, because I think it shows that people can really come to terms with this kind of music. However, there's a lot of people that have just terrible opinions about their music, and they just say the darndest fucking things. So I don't really know. I guess I'm not trying to say that this is like how you should think about the Strokes, because ultimately this is like a very, I guess, kind of subjective way of looking at it. My point really is that when you're looking, I've found it interesting when looking for art to find particular artists and really see how they're creating a world. And that's why I keep bringing up Cezanne, because even though Cezanne's paintings can be a little boring at first, especially the way they exist like kind of in your imagination after you've seen them, is so beautiful. And it's such a complete visual world that has so many metaphorical implications. And I think that that is kind of the same thing that Julian Casablancas is doing with music. It's kind of working in this language that begins with maybe the Ramones, and there's like some Clash, and there's all these cool bands in the sound, but particularly the Ramones, I think, like that driving drum beat and the downstrokes on the guitars, and yeah, I mean they're just a cool band, and so ultimately I guess that's all I wanted to add to that